how's it going? Susan Ruth here. Thanks for listening to another episode of Hey Human Podcast. This is episode 191, and I sat down here in Los Angeles, California with Michael Angelo. He's a visual effects artist, a documentarian, a homeless advocate, and a fire performer. Mostly, we talked about his career up until now and a documentary that he is working on about the Treeman of Venice. Treeman is a homeless artisan. He is a gigantic, if you've ever been to Venice, California, Venice Beach, California, you'll see this looming tree person, and that's Lionel, the tree man. And Michael met him a few years back and started doing this documentary about him. He gets into the whole story. I mean, that's barely skimming the story. So we will definitely get into it here. Throughout this, you will hear poor Michael snuffling. I really appreciate the fact that he came for this interview because he had a cold, and you can hear him, with the snorkeling here and there, poor thing. And he suffered through it kindly so that I could interview him. For New Year's Day, I came down with the flu, so that was really exciting. Apparently, a lot of people here in California have the flu. I was one of them. I threw up a lot. It was real fun. I'm finally back on the mend. Thank goodness. I slept 3 days straight and had some really, really weird fever dreams. Don't even know. In one of them, a gigantic snake came out of the tree and ate my father. It was very distressing. It was this huge, if you ever seen the movie Beetlejuice, that snake that Beetlejuice turns into, the kind of cobra snake, it was like that, this massive thing, and then it came and gobbled him up. It was really terrible. In the morning, I called my dad and just to make sure he was okay. I'm sure poor dad's like, this is what happens when you drop lots of acid in high school. This is the payback for that. So anyway, that's probably neither here nor there. Okay, let's get back to this. So Michael and I had a nice long chat, and he's really doing some wonderful, wonderful work. So I'm excited for you to hear this episode. In other news, social media, Hey Human Podcast is on Instagram and Facebook, and I am on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook under Susan Ruthism. You can check out heyhumanpodcast.com. There's a links page on there that is full up of stuff from every episode. This episode is no different. It's got book references and movie stuff and articles and all that, so definitely check that out. Rate and review Hey Human on iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcast. And what else? Susan at heyhumanpodcast.com if you want to email me. Donate if you are feeling like giving to this ad-free podcast. Please do so. You can do so on the donate page there on the website as well. I feel like there's probably something else. Ooh, I know what. I'm super duper excited because I get to go see Parasite tomorrow. No spoilers. I have no idea what this movie is about. I just know it's going to be incredible. And because I love this writer-director, so cannot wait for that. So excited. I think that's about it out of my life and the show. And thank you for listening. And go on and tell one person about this show, a friend, a family member, somebody you work with, a stranger. Let's get the word out. Hey Human Podcast. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being supportive and wonderful and helping to spread the word and all the good stuff. All right, here we go. Michael Angelo, welcome to Hey Human.
I'm glad to be here.
You're my first podcast guest in the new configuration in this room, such as it is.
You're my first podcast host, so we have something in common.
Oh, you've never been on a podcast?
No.
I don't know why you seem like the modern guy that would be on a podcast all the time or something.
I listen to them a lot. I mean, I learn from the stories of other people. It's one of my big passions.
Yeah, it's a good one. I do too. What's some of your favorite podcasts?
Yours.
Nice. What else?
Absolutely. I mean, I really gravitate to your podcast.
Oh, thank you.
Hey Human, I mean, humanist stories are, big in my mind because I'm trying to always solve this challenge we call like humanity. I look at humanity like a chess problem. I like to play chess, and I'm constantly trying to make it better because my life is good enough that I have that opportunity to do so. I'm not starving on the streets. I'm not in a war-torn part of the world, so I'm trying to figure out how to give to the world and make it better.
That's good. That's a good mode to be in, I think.
Yeah. So your podcast, I guess, is my point, is that really drew me in. So when I met you, and then
it's been a couple of years now, right?
Yeah, it's been.
We met at Jefferson's house on his. They call it. Is it fire night? Is that what they call it? I'm gonna adjust this really quick. So apologies if it makes horrible noise for the listeners. There we go. Okay.
Yeah. Well.
I was with my friend Nikki, and we were on the porch.
No, I remember.
Oh, you remember?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You were wearing pigtails. You look so good in pigtails. You look so
thanks.
Awesome. Yeah.
Got them on today.
I know.
On. I'm wearing them.
Yeah.
Is it wearing pigtails if you just put your hair in pig?
You're asking me?
Yeah, well, I don't know.
I mean, look at my hair. It's so short. I don't.
Yeah, you wear it marine-like.
I had long hair in college.
Oh, yeah. I think I've seen a picture of that.
Yeah, I have some pretty funny pictures of that, It was kind of, groovy.
Yeah, because I think we met before I moved here. So I was still contemplating.
You were talking about moving here. Exactly.
I talked about it for quite a while before I did it.
But it was interesting when I started mentioning Treeman to you, the subject of my documentary.
We're going to get into all that stuff. It's very cool.
You really gravitated towards that kind of, to a story about, giving. And so I think it's interesting that we're here now.
Yeah, I dig what you're doing. I dug what you were doing then. You were in the throes of collecting footage and things, right? Back then?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say I'm in that throw. I'd say we're at the end of that journey. Like, principal photography is literally wrapping up this week.
That's exciting.
Yeah. I don't think we had our ending quite then, but now we have our ending.
Yeah.
But
it's good that life works like that.
Yeah, so documentaries are fascinating in the sense, I mean, I've worked on other people's documentaries. I mean, just for your listeners so they know, I have a history of film and television.
Yeah, I'm going to interview all that stuff out of you.
Yeah, you are? Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to ask about your
background. You drive the boat. I was trying, I thought I should
but it's
give
good
context.
That you mentioned it, for sure.
Yeah. Well, how do we start then?
Finish your statement because I want to hear.
Okay, I've spent a lifetime in the visual arts and film and television because I was really driven towards the arts. I think I was going to be a painter actually, and I just was like, how am I going to feed myself as a painter? And I don't think I believed in my own ability at the young age of 17. So I decided, I traveled the world and just bought a one-way ticket and traveled the world for a little bit and then came back. And then when I saw filmmaking, I was like, and film and television and storytelling, I'm like, okay, that's kind of creative, but I bet there's a way you could make money. And I did production for a while and worked in the camera department. I did, in college, all these internships at Lucasfilm. So I worked at a company called THX and did research for them. And then I got to sneak into Industrial Light and Magic and look at their dailies. I don't know. It's a long career story.
Explain what a daily is for people that don't know.
Yeah, dailies are so when they shoot the visual effects plates at Industrial Light and Magic for Star Wars and what have you, they'll wake up really early the next morning after the production day and they'll review in a screening room the raw material. And the visual effects supervisor, maybe the director, it really depends on where you're having dailies, will often have a red pointer and they'll start pointing at things and looking at things and saying, okay, this is underexposed, or we'll need to shoot a plate for this. I mean, that's very specific to visual effects compositing because you're looking at layering things. It's like Photoshop, layering all those layers, except it's moving. So that's what I do for a living.
Wow.
To pay for my documentary addiction habit. And so, many years later, I was in production, and then it led me into post-production, which is editing. So from camera to editing. And then from there, I got into visual effects, and that was a real nice fit. But to end it, I guess the point is I got to a point in my career where were really, being from San Francisco, I just wanted to play with the big kids. And so I ended up going to New York and LA markets. And then once I had like all these movie stars on my reel of stuff I worked on, I was like, well, what do I do? And that's when I turned to start gifting documentaries to artists experiencing homelessness.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's go back. It's beautiful. And also I want to mention, I just watched this video, Michael Caine talking about the process of acting. He was 50 something at the time, so it must have been quite a while ago, because I think he's much older now. But he said, as actors, they shouldn't look at dailies because it'll get in your head that it should not ever go to the dailies. They just ignore that they're even going on. I thought that was funny.
No, I've heard that actually recently on a podcast from
really?
Another actor. Yeah. Same thing.
Isn't that interesting? Let's go back to the beginning, where I like to start. You were born in California, or where?
I was born in San Francisco. My mom was fourth generation from the Bay Area. We were born in the same hospital. Well, technically I was born in Oakland, so we were born in the same hospital, the same doctor in Oakland. So
that's kind of cool.
Yeah, so fourth generation, and technically right in the line of Oakland and Berkeley. Very mixed community. She went to a 99.9% all black high school. And so, we grew up in a very diverse part of the world.
And for those listening, you're white, you're not black?
I'm a white guy, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And my father was born in Italy, and he immigrated when he was a kid from Italy with the whole family. And he had to go through a restaurant to get to his bedroom in Berkeley, yeah. And so restaurant business became a big part of my blood when I was younger. I learned to work really hard.
It's hard work.
Yeah. So all we do is my parents got separated, so I really built a relationship with my father when I was about 12, and we just worked at the restaurant from you wake up, you get to the restaurant, you work, and then you close the restaurant at like almost midnight, and then you go to Chinatown and eat in the middle of the morning, and then you wake up late and do it all over again. It created a good work ethic from both.
When did you go to school?
Father and mother. So those were more summers or weekends.
Oh, okay. Got it.
But I learned to work because my mom made me work. She was a struggling single mom. And it was great because I had money, and then it gave me independence. And so I have a very strong work ethic from a young age, and just enjoy it. So I plugged it into the art world. What
took you talked about going to work in the film and wanting to be a painter, and then deciding at a pretty young age that wasn't going to be the path. But what made you choose the fork in the road that you did?
Well, yeah, I think it was just a kind of a spidey sense that, becoming a painter might not, I wouldn't be able to survive. And
one could argue that going into the arts of film and television is also not a...
Yeah, but at the time there was enough television. I think I really aimed at television first because I saw that as a viable income. Mm. I could see that you could do it. Mm. And so and then it was visual arts, and then I just got sucked into it. But what I saw also early, again, I thought about survival, and combining survival with the arts. So I did internships earlier than anybody. I started when I was like a sophomore. People were like, why, you don't do that to your junior year. I'm like, no. I created a special major. I was auditing master's program classes, graduate classes when I was an undergraduate, and built a special major around interactive learning. And then I got an internship at Lucasfilm. Right,
you mentioned that. Right. That's so cool.
Yeah, so I was actually working at Skywalker Ranch.
So crazy.
This is where I went to work. Our first intern, they hired me within like a month or two. They were like, "Oh yeah, this kid's we're gonna get a lot out of him." So it was internship at first, and
which means free.
Free, oh absolutely. So they had Skywalker Sound where they mix all the big movies. To this day, it's like the spot. We used to eat in the house, the main house, which was milled from an old redwood bridge that was torn down, and it was all Craftsman's era, with George Lucas would be there sometimes dining with different celebrities. And then the chef was from, I can't remember.
Did they keep you sequestered from all that, or were you?
No. I mean, I think now it is, but when I was there in college, it was pretty chill. So, and then, and that's where I worked. It was, a little bit of a drive to go out to Lucas Valley. It was in Marin County, so I had to go from the city and commute.
What an education.
Yeah. So it's interesting is that I'll fast forward just a little bit, that for the documentary I'm making now, it's all done with volunteers. And because I wanted the story to reflect our main character, the way he gives to strangers. And so I end up going to schools and speaking about career building. And I pull from all that internship experience and say, look, if you do this, you can get a job. And then I say at the end, if you want to work on our film, by the way, I have an internship. So I end up like mentoring all these kids. I mean, a lot of times I'll speak at schools and we won't recruit anybody, and that's fine. That's not why I do it. It's really to kind of help mentor young people who are trying to find their way and give them some advice. So that advice worked for me. I had 9 job offers when I got out of college, just turned them all down, went freelance.
And you've done some big commercials and things, right?
Well, at the time, no, I hadn't done then. But now, yeah, I work on Super Bowl commercials. I work on giant Marvel movies and those kind of things. Though I would say in the last, so many years, I've been mixing that work and working a lot on the documentary. So I don't sleep much.
I know what that's like.
Yeah. But then I graduated and I had all these job offers. I actually turned down a job from Industrial Light and Magic because I was like, I couldn't afford it at the time in my mind. Now I look back, I mean, I would now be on...
What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, I was... The other independence part was, I made my own money to pay for everything. That includes school and what have you. I did get some student loans later, some from my mom remarried later, but at the very beginning, like all that stuff was straight out of pocket. And so for me, it was like, if I go to ILM and work there, they're going to pay me minimum wage when I'm a freelancer and I'm making a day rate as a commercial person. So that's an interesting career choice. I might be, having dinner right now with Steven Spielberg had I taken that job.
Paths, right?
I'll give you another one. This is actually a killer story. Another job I turned down. I love this for the audience that are listening to this that are into this movie. So I heard I would volunteer on shoots because that's how you get ahead. I mean, that's what I tell people. Like, I would go volunteer on different independent films, commercials, and then people would be like, hey, this guy was great. You should hire him for a gig. So I would get all this work. And so I volunteered on this commercial, and he said, oh yeah, I've got this animation, it's stop motion animation thing. And so I thought, okay, cool, I'll go check it out. And they're like, okay, so you're going to have your own car, pay for your own car insurance, you're going to get minimum wage, you're not going to get meals. And I'm like, how am I going to afford to do this? And I'm like, well, let me look. And I went and looked at their stop motion thing, their setup, and they were recording with all these wooden blocks and stuff. And I'm like, where are the computers? And they're like, oh no, we do it old school. I'm like, this is lame, right? But I'm like, all right, not lame, but I'm like, that's cool, but like, come on, like computers.
And how old were you?
I was, I don't remember, 20 somewhere. So then they show me the script. I sign an NDA, right, before it comes out. And I'm reading this script, and it's like Halloween Town and Christmas Town and all this. I'm like, what a stupid script. No one's ever going to like this movie. And then, of course, that's The Nightmare Before Christmas.
One of the greatest.
And, if you look at the way that I've put my heart and soul into anything I've done, had I done ILM or done that, I think my career would have just went, faster forward. So those are a couple live and learns. But the path that brought me where I am today was very much, working in the San Francisco market and kind of knowing like I was destined for something a little more. And so Are we want to go on about my career? I can go on forever.
No, I'm curious.
I can get us to LA if you want.
No, I'm curious that when you say destined for something more, was it already in your mind to live a life of service, or was that still something that was in the distance still for you?
Oh, no. I mean, you met my mom. She just meets strangers and just starts giving to them. We were in the line, and this woman came in to buy food, and she couldn't afford it, and it was like Thanksgiving, and my mom just turned to her and said, "No, I'll take care of that." And
your mom being a single mom that also struggling?
This happened this Thanksgiving.
Oh, this Thanksgiving.
Oh yeah, she just looked over and this woman was older and she went and bought groceries and she's like, "Oh, I can't get these items because it's too much." My mom's like, "No, we're getting you those items."
Aww.
Happy Thanksgiving. That's who we are. Like, I'm raised by all women, so it's basically a whole different vibe. I mean, my mom's had relationships when I was growing up, and I had the relationship with my father, but for the most part, my role models were women, so I kind of had a different perspective.
Sure.
And she just happened to be the most giving person, regardless of gender, because I don't think it's specific to gender. She just happened to be the most giving people I've ever met in my life. I mean, she's to a fault, which is we'll get into because it relates to the film.
All right, well, let's pop over to that a little bit. How did you meet Treeman? Tell everyone who Treeman is, firstly.
Yeah, well, okay, so I'll put an ending on the visual effects thing. So I ended up getting into visual effects, realizing I needed to go a bigger market, and I ended up in LA. So I rented this office in Venice Beach. And Venice Beach, if people haven't been there or don't know about it, it's so eclectic with a million different artists, many of them who are living at the beach. They are experiencing homelessness. It's a tradition that, to my knowledge, has been going on since the 60s, since kind of like the hippie era, where people would live outdoors, they would be unhoused, but they would actually also make tie-dye shirts, they would always work, they would always create some kind of art for survival. And so by the time that my career kind of ended up where it was, where I'd kind of, working, had all these movie stars in my reel, and I'd kind of played with the big kids, like I said before, with visual effects, I was like, I want to do something that has meaning. Maybe it's because my grandmother passed away and we were super tight. And I was like, oh, well, mortality, now I really need to give to people. And now I'm kind of stable and have this income and I'm creative and everything's kind of locked in place. So I started gifting documentaries to these artists experiencing homelessness on the beach, and Treeman was the second artist. And I went up to him and said, "Hey, because for the audience, if you Google the Treeman of Venice Beach, you're going to see this wild character. I mean, it is so surreal."
How tall is he?
He's about 10 feet tall.
Yeah.
And it's a surreal tree. It's straight out of Lord of the Rings. It's straight out of I'm trying to think of that Guillermo del Toro film.
Pan's Labyrinth?
Pan's Labyrinth. It's that
great film.
Incredible, the costuming that he does. So, I when I started gifting films, the first film I did was pretty successful. It was at the Hammer Museum. It was this guy that lived in the alley behind my office, and people really liked the film. So I tracked him down, and I thought he was just like a guy. Originally, I thought he was just an artist trying to make money on the beach. And what I discovered was, no, he's like me. He's giving to strangers. Like same thing I was doing, trying to give to these artists, he was already doing it. Like, he wasn't asking for money. Like, he was going around talking to people. The first day we filmed, it was like 12 hours a day, didn't ask for a penny, and came back with $7. And I'm like, okay, wait, what? Like, this is not someone that's looking at his own survival. He's trying to do something. And then I started trying to understand his mission. And he's on this mission to reconnect us with our human nature and with each other. And
this was the first man you met with.
No, this is Treeman.
This is Treeman. I'm sorry.
Treeman.
Okay, you were talking about the person behind the office. I got convoluted.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to convolute it.
Let's hold on before we skip ahead to Treeman. The very first documentary was the guy living behind your office.
Yep.
And what was that documentary called?
So that one was called The Art of Funky Pussy.
Okay.
And I ended up. He swears a lot, so I ended up kind of pulling it down for now because we have such a kid audience that I want to reach to in a family. Yeah, exactly. And trying to figure out what to do with that film. He basically is an irreverent guy. He's lived on the beach in that parking lot for like 30 years, and he makes like pictures of a cat flipping you off. That's the Funky Pussy. So I came up with the name, The Art of Funky Pussy, because his name is Arthur. And what happened was the Hammer Museum had the Venice Beach Biennial to celebrate Venice artists, and they made the Funky Pussy the poster. And I'm like, okay, now I'm going to start making my films, because I was like, I wanted to start gifting these documentaries, and I thought this is a great start. So so they love the film, the community loved the film. I got all this great feedback from this little short film that I did in 5 days. So I thought I'll just do another one with Treeman, and here we are 7 years later.
Yeah, okay, so you went up to Treeman. He had made $7 just being out and about. Yeah,
so I realized that I thought he was just an artist, trying to make money on the beach to make a living, and then it was the opposite. I mean, he'll get some tips from people, and when he's really struggling, he will say every once in a while, tips are appreciated but not expected. I use it for fertilizer to help me grow. But for the most part, he doesn't ask for anything. And so he's perpetuating his own homelessness, but he's doing something bigger in his mind. And what he's trying to do is reconnect us despite our differences, and to kind of stop. He has this whole thing about don't judge a book by its cover, and to stop them judging each other, whether we're wealthy, black, white, gender, sexual orientation, all those things. Or, and this is going to be really unpopular, politics. I mean, he is going to treat you like family, no matter what your politics, whether you're a liberal, whether you're a conservative. And that's been a very interesting experience, because he and I have joined forces, because I really believe in what he's doing, so that the film is taking the same mission as Treeman, where we want to connect our audience from every part of the world. Anyone that's not are so entrenched and so afraid of what's happening with Trump that, Democrat side, if you're not with us, you're against this, or, so it's really...
Which, unfortunately, people don't understand that that's perpetuating the same emotion. The output is the same. It may have a hold into something noble of saying like, oh, well, this side is this side is that, but it's still putting the same energy out. It's hard for people. I'm sure that's not a popular belief system, but
let's get into this.
Well, I had a conversation. I went out to dinner the other night with my friend Chris, and we started talking about Trump, and he said something sort of offhandedly like, oh, well, you can't feel sorry for him. I said, I can, and I do. I do have empathy for him, because he's a human being. Even I've had some people on the show that I could not disagree with more. We are on opposite sides of everything on so many levels. But I think it's important to still believe that someone is a human being, because otherwise, how will they ever have the capacity to change? Ever. Or find... It's sort of... in a pedantic way, it reminds me of The Grinch That Stole Christmas. Right? Here's this horrible Grinchy Grinch. And then one little Cindy Lou Who managed to get in there and grow his heart 5 times too big, right? For his body. And it's such a beautiful metaphor for possibility.
Well... You're
laughing.
No, because... I've been researching this for 7 years. So I'm so right there with you on the playing field. We're right in the front together, about to step across the touchdown together and get a touchdown, because Treeman is a giant 10-foot walking, talking tree, Cindy Hulu.
Yeah.
That's what he is.
Cindy Lou Who.
That's what he is. And I'm trying to explain. And certain people get it, certain people don't. And what's interesting with... so it's getting back to your point about when you... you could argue in this country, if you wanted a democratic administration and the people who were centrist, you wanted them to vote for you. If you put them down, you shame them,
right.
You ridicule them if they have any conservative viewpoints, do you think they're going to vote for you?
Right.
So what's scary is the same interests that are wanting to protect humanity and the future of the human race are basically destroying their own chances to get their candidate in place because of, in my opinion, from what I researched, kind of the loss of humility and the loss of taking the time to listen that, this other side of the story. And then you have conservatives at the same time that they have so much care for humanity, and often there's a huge Christian base in this country that's looking at Christian values, and yet they're getting so concerned about just writing the government a blank check that they're trying to fight for their short-term survival. So then they're putting their humanity aside. So to me, what's fascinating is it's liberals and conservatives want the same thing, is what I've kind of come to thanks to Treeman. He's gotten my mind more open, to be honest, and to really look at this problem from a humanitarian. They both want survival.
That's all anybody wants.
Conservatives just want short-term survival. Liberals want long-term survival. They want the same thing. And I think when you're in a tug-of-war and you don't want to lose an inch, you just don't listen to anything because you don't want to lose that inch.
Right.
But if conservatives were to just focus more on social issues and be a little more leaning that direction, and liberals were to be a little more fiscally responsible and not just writing the government a blank check, which is a whole business itself of stealing money, just like corporations steal money, then I think if both sides came centrist, we'd be in good shape right now. I
think that politicians operate like corporations, period. Because that's who's funding them for the most part. Yeah, it's tricky. It's tricky to be a human being and hold on to your humanity, because I've met folks, obviously, from both sides of the aisle, all people that are apolitical, the whole gamut. And I think you hit the nail on the head that it is about a person's survival, whatever they deem to be that thing. If I am a white nationalist, for example, and for me, I'm concerned that the survival of the white race, which, of course, is, for me, I just want everyone to, as Warren Beatty says in Bulworth, I just want everyone to have sex with everyone so we're all the same color,
Right.
But guess what? When we're all the same color, we'll find something else to hate about.
Right.
The size of your ears or your fingernails. I talk about that all the time on this show. It's really... The trick, I think, is to look at someone and see yourself. That is the hardest thing in the world for a human being to do, because of that idea that I've got to survive, instead of you've got to survive too, because it's a symbiotic relationship. The world is a symbiotic relationship, but it's so easy to forget that stuff.
Well, and people are looking at each other that are liberals and conservatives. They're both looking at like, hey, you're taking away from my survival. The difference is one is thinking more short-term, one is thinking more long-term. They're both valid viewpoints.
And some people are doing it on the backs of the underdog, or people that are marginalized, or, religion convolutes things. And, I'm a Christian, but I'm not really following the Christ consciousness. There's all sorts of things going on there. The newspapers scream about this, that, and the other. It's very hard to maintain a sense of humanity when you're being screamed at all the time by newsprint and televisions. Yeah. If you turn all that stuff off and you stop reading all that stuff and you just look at your fellow human being, then maybe that's a start.
I mean, that's Treeman's manifesto. So again, he's trying to
and I are like this.
No, I mean, absolutely. So that's what blew me away about him. He's basically walking up to treating everybody like family and trying to get us to see each other in each other's eyes.
Okay, so a green man is walking up to, now that's a hyper reality, but a green tree is walking up to someone who's maybe, I don't know, hyper white or something. I don't know what you would call it.
I threw a wrench in it, and I'll tell you why I threw a wrench in, because his whole reason he wears the mask in the tree and he doesn't let you see his race is because he wants you to see that we're all reflections of nature. We're all reflections of each other. People can't see his eyes because they're behind the mask. People move in closer to see his eyes, and he's putting little broken pieces of mirror in front of his eyes. So when you look to see him, you see yourself.
I love that so much. And it's interesting that they're broken.
Oh, because we're all flawed as humans. That's
Not only are we flawed, but if you look into a broken mirror, you see several images of yourself, because we are not a linear being. There's so much to us. There's so many layers and levels, and every experience that we've had, people talk about the onion. Every experience we have puts another layer, and we are a mosaic at best.
Yeah, we're complex.
Yeah.
So it's interesting when you're kind of, it's funny because when I talk to people that are really chewing on this problem like I have been, and thinking about humanity and really opening themselves up to not put people in a box of either left, right, wrong, which is happening in the media.
It's hard not to look at people, say, in the detainment camps and not go, that's wrong. I mean, just on a human level, that's wrong.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
But in
so
general,
how do you,
in broad brushstrokes,
sure.
Looking at the world,
Yeah.
when you see someone that's just because they are a business person and all of a sudden they're conservative wearing a khaki pants, and to say, okay, that person belongs in this box.
Sure.
So it's really easy to put people into these two separate things, to see the world as binary, to see the world as a 0 or 1. I think that the coding in what's happening with digital media is trying to divide us into those boxes, because that allows there's a number of reasons. It allows you to monetize things, because if people are in these two different camps, you can build up this one camp, or you can build up one side, or you can put them against each other, because anger is a really great algorithm to get clicks, because the ads pop up. There's a great book by Matt Taibbi. He's He is a journalist, and it's called Hate Inc. And I don't agree with everything that he says. I don't agree with everything that I research, just so when people hear what I'm talking about. I'm not binary either. I'm a mishmash, like you said, a mosaic.
Yeah.
But this Hate Inc. book is really interesting because he breaks down his experience as a journalist. His dad was a journalist growing up from a kid, and looking at how right now journalists, the only way for them to survive, if they do true journalism, like where you're unbiased and you're not editorializing and you're doing these deep dives into finding corruption, these big risky stories, there's no way to survive. It's all clickbait now because you're competing with the online world. And if you go after any of the big businesses and the story breaks, 2 days later people forget about it, then that big business comes back and sue you. You don't have the revenue from the readership from that big story that carries for months to carry that risk. So now the stories are this, like a reality TV show. That's
we have become a giant reality TV show. And reality TV, of course, as we all know, is absolutely scripted. There's nothing real about it.
Yeah,
so.
The producers in the background playing with it.
Yeah, there's the great and powerful Oz. I don't consider myself a binary thinker either. And it is interesting whenever I read... Like, I read Homo Deus, which is a great book, but I certainly didn't agree with everything he had to say. And that's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay to go and read things and research things and understand things and not be 100% on board with something.
Does your audience know what Homo Deus is?
I've talked about it before.
Oh, okay.
So
future. I read Sapiens, which is the history.
I read that too, yeah.
And Sapiens by Yuval Harari, I believe. Mm-hmm.
You're braver than I didn't want to say that.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean...
but that's right. Yuval
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, these are books that I pull from. And again, that's why I want the audience to not ever look at anything I say or Treeman says as binary. We're humans. We're flawed. And that's actually part of our beauty. But you can pull things that make sense, and then you can question things. But one thing that he said that was really interesting, he had this whole premise, and I think you and I actually talked about this one time on Abbott Kinney over cocktails, is that our specific subspecies of archaic humans, which I believe we're Homo sapiens versus Neanderthal, versus many others.
Homo erectus.
Homo erectus, etc.
There's a little pile.
Thank you.
I am part Neanderthal. I just want to put that.
Oh yeah, if you do your whole 23andMe.
Shout out to my Neanderthal brothers and sisters.
23andMe, yeah. But one of the things he argued was the reason that our subspecies was able to survive and kind of knock out the other ones for the most part, there was some interbreeding apparently, was that we could get larger, our tribes larger than about 100 or something like that, because if you get past 100, how could you trust someone, because it's all word of mouth, like gossip, and which relates to news, is part of our survival, which is part of our species. You can see that in other research, even Darwin, I'm imagining. That one I gotta remember. It might not have been Darwin.
Darwin wrote for Newsweek.
Yeah, exactly. I read too much. But my point being is what he said was that because we believe in the same fiction, now all of a sudden it's like, you believe in the sun god, I believe in the sun god. Now all of a sudden you can grow the group.
The tribe.
Yeah. And now you have this Facebook, or you have political left or right, or you have Muslim and Christian, or you have people that are global warming scientists, people that want to follow that science, and you have vegans, and you have carnivores, and and all this. And
everyone is 100% right.
Yeah, everybody's 100% right. There's no way to actually... and I think that when you talk to people, it's not true, but I thought it was interesting that believing in fiction is how we can gather into larger tribes. So, for example, the light red means we have to stop. And right now, what I think is happening is the digital kind of world of ideas, seeing the world through the lens of digital media is really, in my opinion... clouding our vision and making us think that there's only one there's only one reality to believe in, or
which is dangerous.
Or one fiction, I should say,
because someone else is creating that reality for you. You are consuming it like a breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
It's an algorithm.
Yeah,
your reality is an algorithm. Your phone tells you everything you already agree with. So how? But we all, you and I are pretty close to this because we follow, but a lot of people in the audience, hopefully new people, will realize that like when you listen to your phones giving you things you already like, you're missing something from 20 years ago when you watched the news and it was the news. Yeah. It was just, whether you like it or not, you heard opposing opinions.
Right.
And now in college, there's an exercise that we did in college, which was try to prove your opponent right. So you would go in and find like a racist person in history and try to prove their opponent right, which is really hard. But you might find where their fear is, and you might actually understand them so you could communicate with them. Now they will actually get the teacher fired for trying to do that exercise. And what you don't realize is that exercise is the key to figure out how to communicate with the person you disagree with in order to actually pull them over like Cindy Lou. It's so crazy.
What I found fascinating, critical thinking is such a paramount part of your brain's existence, and curiosity. It all feeds into itself. In that, now colleges, like you said, have shut down the ideas that they don't want people that think differently or speak differently. I mean, I'm not saying have Adolf Hitler come speak at your school. That's not what I'm talking about. But people who maybe don't have the same viewpoint, or I think there is a certain line to be drawn for hate speech. I do think that, hate speech that incites riot, that incites violence, should not get a free pass. I have a pretty hard line on that because I think it's so dangerous. Because I don't, like, when I was a little kid, my parents wouldn't let me watch All in the Family, for example, because they didn't think I was old enough to understand the irony and the commentary that was being made. And they're likely right, because what if I'd heard Archie Bunker say, something anti-Semitic, and my brain hadn't developed to a point where I understood that was a commentary, So here are these people that are super liberal who are saying, oh, you can't do that in class, you can't teach that assignment, but they don't understand that that's exactly what they're rallying against when they're saying, oh my God, how can you take critical thinking out of school? And nobody sees that it's the same damn thing. It makes me crazy.
Well, it's an interesting time. People are well-intentioned, but I think taking away free speech, it sounds great now when media is controlled by the left, but what if the media is controlled by the right some way, and you created
it's controlled by both.
You created so that now it's legislated. There's law that says you can't say certain things. What if those things are things you don't agree with? I think this country's free speech is important.
I agree, and I do think free speech is important, but not when it incites violence. I think because people, I hate to say it, but they're not necessarily skilled in stepping back from that and making a personal decision. It's a fever pitch when someone is screaming at you, inciting something dangerous and violent, like all gays should be killed or whatever, then that's dangerous because the people listening might not have the skills to understand that that person is hateful and I shouldn't go kill someone because of their hate. Do you know what I'm saying?
I mean,
it's
the
tricky,
70s, basically, when that happened, people just was peaceful and they were able to demonstrate and handle it. I just think now people... It
wasn't always peaceful. There was a lot of riots and things.
It's true, but there was like that whole movement of it was obviously Black Panthers and like a lot of things are like using violence as a means for protest. But there was also there's the kind of hippie movement. I mean, I'm from Berkeley area.
Protest.
Yeah, I'm
I know
from
what you're talking about.
that area where it was nonviolent. Now it's fascinating to look at Berkeley, being fourth generation from that part of the world, and it's fascinating to just kind of see now where these kids are using violence. I've never really, it was more like a sit-in. You would use nonviolence to try to protest. So it's interesting because the second you start squashing free speech, it's a fine line.
Yeah, but free speech is protected, but within the confines of that protection, it specifically says not when it incites violence.
No, I'm well aware. I'm thinking about this one a lot. It's a tricky one, especially because the second you start taking out the speech of people that you don't agree with, even if it's ugly, you don't even know where they are. I think you make them stronger. Like when I look at the Charleston, those riots and things, if people could have just stood by there that were protesting against these white nationalists and just basically sat there among each others and just snickered like, what a bunch of dorks. They have tiki torches and they're like going like anti, immigration, but like tiki torches are not from the U.S. I don't know. I just think it would be, if they would have just sat there and just ridiculed and just been like, held a sign up and said, you guys are dorks, then I think they would have, the white nationalists have zero power. The story would have they would have been a mockery. There's some hate speech people that come to Venice that they like, you'll burn in hell if you don't believe in Jesus and these kind of things. Sort
of the Westboro.
Very much like them, yeah.
I am very curious I would love to have somebody from there.
Get his daughter, the founder, she
renounced, right?
You gotta get her. She's really cool.
I would love to, yeah.
I don't have any power to do that, but if I ever do, she's one of the people that I look at when I take Treeman's message forward to try to see how can we get along with people we disagree with. She's one, and there's another gentleman, I'm trying to think of his name, where he used to recruit for white nationalists, kind of like skinhead and Nazi guys. And
I had a former neo-Nazi on the show, and he was really interesting. And then, of course, I had Richard Nichols, KKK guy.
That was an amazing podcast, yeah.
Thank you. But again, it's that thing of if I just quiet down for a second and listen and say, so why do you think that way?
Yeah.
It's fascinating what you learn about yourself as well.
No, you got him to say things. I was shocked. You got him to turn opinion. You changed opinion in one podcast about people of color. I thought that was amazing. But going back to the gentleman that he basically recruited, white nationalists. Now he actually goes around the world and speaks and helps to educate people white people who are in these poor neighborhoods that are subject to become prey to get recruited, and he teaches them to let them know how the tricks are and so he stops it.
Yeah, Richard talked about it because he's a recruiter, and he said that he looks for kids who are lonely or maybe being abused, or it's the same thing that a sex trafficker uses, the same tactic. You look for the weakest person in the group and start giving them attention and love.
Yeah. And then we see them afterwards and think, oh, they're a piece of shit, and we should just, pardon my French, we should just dehumanize that person. But anyway, I wanted to say, so here we are, it's the Hare Krishna Festival. It's called the Festival of Chariots. And they're dancing with all their flowers, and, they are like the sweetest people. They're like, if you don't believe what we believe, no worries, but we're going to dance with flowers, and you can come join us. If you want to hear about our religion, no worries. We'll feed you for free, all this vegan stuff, no karma
They had a big Thanksgiving feast.
Yeah, they're giving all the time. So anyway, Treeman's always dancing through with all the Hare Krishnas, and he's Hare 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 Wo, and he's covered in flowers. He just really fits in. But behind them is this kind of Westboro Baptist Church type group, with their megaphones, hate speech, doing everything they can to disrespect. But there are people there that know they're going to come, and they'll have these signs that'll say that God hates fags or this or that, and then there'll be another guy that's with a sign that's not with them that says God hates signs, making a mockery of them. So I think if we learned to kind of step up our game and be a little more intelligent about these people that are saying things that are so backwards thinking and racist and those kind of things, and instead of like getting in a physical altercation and learned how to be nonviolent, we would rise to the top. Those people that were doing all the hate speech would just be a ridicule. And it's the same in politics. If we could rise above, and instead of becoming like Trump, the same way that he blames people and is totally insecure and can't control his temper, then people, they'd probably see that people that were more sent on the Democrats would probably be back in administration. But where we're at now, I think it's so much of a blame game. I don't know how anyone's going to stop him in the next election, because we're too busy being enraged with this kind of recreational outrage to step back, have some humility, and realize that we're all on the same team humanity. And again, that's this movie. That's what I've been doing for 7 years. And this guy is
7 years is a long time to be working. That was a great conversation. I could talk with you about this stuff all day.
No, I mean, I'm concerned we're gonna
it's okay. So let's tact again, and switch over. So 7 years.
Yeah, 7 years.
That's a really long time to be working. I mean, maybe it's not. I've never done a documentary. Is that an average time? Is that extraordinary?
Well, this is basically, this is my first documentary I've directed. That's like a full-on long form piece. I mean, other than the shorts, and I've worked with Werner Herzog on a number of films. I was doing color, visual effects, editorial. I mean, I bumped into him at a screening. He doesn't know who I am, but he's very serious. I used to drop jokes in German because I speak a lot of languages. And he was like, let's just do the work. And, he's so damn serious. But what my point is that, following along his documentaries and looking at his films, I've seen, I think they take like 5 years, but I think it just depends on the film. And our film started to look at the joy you receive when giving selflessly to a stranger. That was basically our tagline. This is what we're doing. And, and he and I, we're on a mission together. Like he's someone experiencing homelessness. So here I am making a film with someone who's experiencing homelessness. But then I try to get help in Hollywood, and they're like, why is this guy involved? I'm like, because it's one of those documentaries where the film, the director is involved in the story, and it also reflects the story. It's all about reflections that we're working together, and there's no different, wasn't very popular for this particular group. I'm finding, the right groups of people, but what
was that like? Just as a side note, when you would be with homeless people by day and then go home to your bed at night, did you have any feelings of to just see that as an opulence, I guess? Or
I don't feel an opulence, but I feel a gratitude. It's funny you say that. I mean, literally, oh man, there's a couple of things I get teary about on this stuff because it's so heavy.
Sure.
I will not cry on this podcast, but
you would not be the first.
I get so close. I've heard you cry.
Yeah, lots.
I get so close to people on the streets. You know what I mean? It's like, look, I was doing visual effects, working on more than $100 million movies, like hundreds of $1 million movies, and I have like a lot of expendable income, and I was like going out and traveling and hard. I was like, life was pretty, and then you see someone that's on the streets and it's easy to see that person as other, right? Like other, depending on the person, maybe if they're not, especially if they're not handicapped, because a lot of times there's that term bums you hear over time, or people that are just, out there, winos and those kind of things. And then you could see yourself as separate, like that's this whole other world. And, I might not just connect with that person. I'm not saying I was that way, but I'm just saying like I had kind of my own, I wasn't on the inside. So I had a viewpoint of this other world. And working with Treeman really taught me to take my care for humanity well beyond that. Like I thought I was an understanding person then, but when you get on the inside, you realize there's definitely people, especially in Venice, smoking weed, getting free phones from the government, free food, totally stealing from the government, robbing us blind, 100%. But there's so many people now, like 54% of the new people that are homeless in Los Angeles are just under financial stress, and it's breaking them. And
it's a cyclical thing too, right?
Those are the first-time homeless people. First time, 54%. So that means more than half of the people it's financed, not mental or not drugs. That's what I'm trying to get at. I'm realizing it's mothers now. It's mothers with their kids. It's because there's very little housing being built, and the property, the life of the rents are going up, and and basically income's not going up the same rate as the rents, and so people they're end up in the streets now are. I mean, it could be you and me. I had a homeless summer. Where I was homeless. I was living in my van because I just couldn't handle the money.
This is what I think is why homelessness makes people so uncomfortable, is because it's the mirror. It's not too many steps to be the person you're looking at there on the street. It's not too many steps at all. And that's terrifying for a lot of people. They don't know it's terror that they're feeling. They don't know it's fear. Fear and anger are bedfellows.
Oh, absolutely.
So instead of touching it as fear, they touch it as anger, because it's a much more comfortable place to be.
Yeah, or judgment. Yeah.
That's the same thing.
Yeah, so maybe that's the thing that I was trying to say, that before this film, maybe I didn't see my reflection in people that were experiencing homelessness in the same way as I do now. Now, when I'm out with the Treeman, or other people that are in those circles, and then I get back to my bed, the thing I think about is like, wow, I'm so grateful just to be, indoors right now. And this is a gift in itself. Because when you do have success financially, not that I'm that successful, but when I had success, when I have had successes, it's easy to forget and just get and be like, oh, that person's got a nice car, and so my car's from 2005, so just so you know.
Mine's 2008. I feel you. I love my little test driven. That's what I call her. When you experience Treeman being seen by people, for the most part, everyone is full up of joy, or are there people that are like, what the hell is this guy doing?
Sometimes, the thing about Treeman is, I find that 90% of the time, people break through and love it. There's a thing he does, they're called tree awakenings. He doesn't do what the Bushman does in San Francisco. The Bushman is this man that's experiencing homelessness, hides behind a bush and goes, rah! And people are walking by, scares them, and then he gets tips whenever But Treeman will just stand there and not even move, and he'll just say hi when they walk by, and they will scream bloody murder, drop their pizza or what have you. So sometimes people are annoyed by the tree awakenings, but it's rare. Usually what happens is they get a tree awakening, it scares them, and then he goes, that's a tree awakening. It's a good thing. I'm here to remind us to be aware of our human nature and our natural surroundings. And usually they laughed. But the thing that's really magical about a tree awakening is that that's his moment to have a conversation with a stranger. And that's when he will blow minds. I've seen him, there was a woman, we were on Hollywood Boulevard, and she had a tree awakening. And then she was standing there watching him. All these tree awakenings kept happening, and the crowd started gathering because as people are walking down, they don't see Tree Man, and so people will take pictures and be part of it. And he's not asking for a penny, even though he gets some tips. And this woman, her friend had just died. I'll give this one thing away from the film because there's lots in the film that I want to save. But her friend had died, and just seeing this, that there was a stranger out on the streets that was just taking the time to give people attention, make them laugh, lighten their day, have a conversation once they did. And he's in this beautiful, incredibly wild, surreal tree outfit. She breaks down crying and saying, this is what the world needs. Why aren't we just being kind to each other? Why aren't we just giving a little joy in our lives? And so I've seen him got people to tears a lot because they look at the beauty of what he's doing. And it's really hard to translate into film because unless you meet him in person, we're there for sure. But that's another reason maybe why it took so long. But yeah.
And he's down in Venice a lot still?
He's still in Venice. I don't want to give too much away about the story, but I will say that a big part of our story is looking at the bridge out of homelessness. And after 20 years of being homeless, the Tree Man is crossing that bridge. I'll say that's about as far as I'll go.
Let's talk a little bit about the Belief project.
BeLeaflets.
Yeah.
So that's a good segue in BeLeaflets. So BeLeaflets, so from the beginning, Tree Man and I should say Lionel Powell is the Tree Man. I want to give his real name, but I like to call him Tree. But from the beginning, Tree Man and I saw the documentary, immediately, like we started to make the film, and I think, it's another 10-minute film I'm going to make and just put it out, shoot it in 5 days. All of a sudden, I was like, wait, you play music? Oh, you like to dance? And you like costuming? And all of a sudden, this guy is my best friend, And, certain people were that were not homeless. People in that I was saying, they're in the bubble, were kind of like, why is Michael Angelo hanging out with this homeless guy? Or like some people would be like, ooh, isn't it cool that he hangs out with someone who's experiencing homeless? So it was a real interesting thing to see. But we became best friends. We started playing music together. We did all these things. And we realized really quickly, this is not a film where we're just going to tell this story and spit it out there. This is a movement. And we want to make a change. And he always has these ideas about how to make change. But, his mind's a little bit different, being out there all that long, and he's got a very unique mind. He's a genius, but very unique mind. So for him to organize and actually put the parts together of how to get a structure enough to put that together, that's a little bit trickier for him. Me, I'm a super structure guy. I do visual effects. I'm into math, but I'm also into creativity, so I kind of have that, I guess, is it left-right brain? So we were kind of almost, I think, waiting for the right fit for us of what we were going to do to make change. We tried many things. We've done environmental things. We've been feeding the hungry on the beach. We've done free art education for children. We've done a lot of explorations of giving to the joy you receive when giving to strangers. But now the narrative is really boiled down to this bridge out of homelessness. How can we use Lionel's story and journey to cross the bridge out of homelessness so that other people who are experiencing homelessness can get off the streets? And we've got a formula. And we've been working with LA County government to do it, the Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority. We've been working with Chrysalis, which is this incredible employment program that gets you prepared to go back into rejoin the workforce, and can get you into a transitional job for a year. So that means right now, if you're living on the streets and you're like, I want to change, we've got the steps to get you into housing and recovery, especially if you're work capable. And so what we did is we looked at the problem. Homelessness is so big. we can't solve the whole thing, the two of us together, but we certainly can take a chunk out of it by using his story. So who's like he is? Maybe they have some struggles. Maybe they've been in the street for a while. Maybe they have a learning disability, but yet they're still relatively functioning where they could do a job, okay? So what the BeLeaflets are, they started, oh, this is one of the cry things again. Okay, they started with this woman that I saw on the beach who was pregnant and she was homeless, experiencing homelessness. I'm trying to switch my language because that's a better way to say it. And I knew that I couldn't. This is beyond my capability because I know a lot about homelessness, but pregnancy, I know a lot about women's lives being raised by women, but pregnancy, that's pretty heavy duty, and being on the streets. So I went up to my office and I started to research like quickly. I didn't want her to leave. So I ran upstairs and then I started researching, and I realized there's women's shelters and there's one even specifically for women experiencing homelessness right in Santa Monica. I print everything up. I go down to her. She's still there. And I start talking to her because that's the first step. Just talking to someone. That's what LAHSA, Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority, told me is the first step. Talking to someone who's experiencing homelessness is the first step towards change. And then after I kind of had a little rapport with her, I said, I'm curious, did you know about any services? I noticed that you're expecting. Did you know there's any services? She said, no. And I said, I printed this up for you. And then she just looked up at me, and you could just see in her eyes, this hope, like, holy shit. Like,
and this person cares enough to have.
I think that's the big part of
that's
it.
That's a huge part of it.
Yeah. But so I gave her that information, and I said, yeah, you could just go. That's not far from here. And she was like, okay, I'm going to go. And I'm not going to cry right now, but I was going to tell you, like, I cried then like a baby because I was like, now I get it. There's people that are out there that are lost. Some are taking advantage of the system, but some are just kind of lost. Some are really deeply lost where maybe they're drug addicted or they're mentally ill.
Yeah.
But there's this middle, and that's the biggest group that's growing right now. They're lost in our society, and they just need the bridge to get back out. So I said, Treeman, you got to come over. We got to shoot an interview. We do these silhouette interviews where we shoot Lionel and I against the sky. I just gave away a second thing. All right, you can put that in. It's okay. And
they won't know what that means.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
Trust me, I have a feeling people will watch this documentary.
Okay. Well, we're still in the middle of making it, but the BeLeaflets are available now on the website. That's what I'll say. So I said. I told him the story on camera. I mean, actually, we were talking, about women being homeless and how heavy it is. And he sees a lot of predatory behavior out there.
Sure.
A lot of rape, a lot of sexual assault. And he started crying, like really. So now we're like crying. And then I said, well, what do you think about this idea where we could, and I don't even remember who to credit with. I'll have to look at the film to remember. But one of us, the leaf-shaped leaf, and where we could put the steps that he's working through onto this leaflet, a leaf-shaped leaflet. And that's when the BeLeaflets were born. And they're basically cheat sheets to regionalize homeless services. Right now it's just for LA County. So whatever zip code you are in LA, you can print a BeLeaflet in LA County. This just started on Giving Tuesday, December of this year. So in 2019. So that means if this is successful in LA and people take a BeLeaflet, print it, and like you said, they go and talk to the person, because you can hand out a leaflet to someone that doesn't want it, and it doesn't matter. You make a rapport with them first. You can tell they want help. That's when you give them, and you can print them from the website, and I print them on cardstock, so they're 33 cents each. I get nice ones. So I don't want to just hand them out like candy, but I find the people that really are deserving. You can print them at home for free. So, but and so what the steps are this for this particular group of people experiencing homelessness. First step is you get into what's called CES, which is like you find a CS entry point, and it means coordinated entry system. I wouldn't even worry about the name of that, but the bottom line is that you go to a place that's all general services. They basically say, okay, wow, let's first get you a caseworker. Let's get you some socks. Let's get you some tampons. Let's get you a razor. Let's get you some food bank. Let's get you fed. You get some hygiene. Here's a shower. That's the first step because you've been out there. Then what they do is they'll refer you into whatever housing options are available for you. Once you've been kind of going to get coordinated entry system, they register you. And then from there, the way we look at the bridge across out of homelessness is healthcare. Because what's happening is these people are outdoors, whether you're in a cold part of the world, which will kill you so easily in Chicago. So many people that are experiencing homeless are dying. Or you're in a sunny spot where your skin is and you're outdoors all the time and it's just too much sun.
There's also a lot of festering sores on feet and legs that I've seen, the homeless folks that I've talked to.
No, that's big.
Yeah, I know.
So next we get you to the closest health center.
Sure.
And then, and if you look on our website right now, we have 21 different BeLeaflets. There's so many health clinics. We have a link to get if they want one close to your zip code, but the BeLeaflets are set up for all the other services.
I'm curious on these BeLeaflets. Their addresses of places for them to go because they're not going to have internet access to be able to.
It's everything. So what we have in the BeLeaflet is the address, the hours, the phone number, the website.
Yeah, great.
I'm buttoned down. We make sure. So
everything's there.
Yeah. So together we have everything down. So, but once you get into healthcare, then they can go to a clinic. They can get a medical clinic and they can start dealing with their health issues. So now they're getting some food, they're getting some hygiene, they're getting like the basics. They're registered to get into this housing option thing if they qualify. But it's really, for this middle ground, they're not mentally ill, they're not drug addicted. That's harder for tax dollars to pay for housing. And that seems reasonable if you think about it. So really the next step once they're healthy is let's get those who are work capable employed. You go to Chrysalis, we got the closest Chrysalis office. You go in there, that company has been around since the 80s working with businesses. And businesses are the reason that company works because businesses are sacrificing and hiring people, even people that are ex-cons, giving them a fair chance. So, and then what happens is they help you with your resume. They get you prepared for the job. They do a mock interview. They give you clean clothes so you can go to an interview. They give you an address for your mail. I mean, it's amazing. You go through the program. And I should know we're filming this week. I'm going to find out this week how long the program takes. We're going to be filming this week. But you go through the program and maybe a month or two at the most, depending on how fast you go to the classes. That's what it is. Then you can get a transitional job for a year. That means any person in Los Angeles County who's on the streets can be employed in like a month or two, right? Now you've got money in your pocket. What do you do with that money? Do you want to wait for Section 8 housing? Do you want to wait? There's shared housing is something that they're starting to do now. So you take your own money, you combine it with whatever benefits you might have from the government if you can get some. And full disclosure, Treeman doesn't have any, so he's just working from just his money. Oh, that's another thing. I will be fine. And then you can get into shared housing, and there's a great group called shareselfhelp.org is their website, Share Collaborative Housing. And then Chrysalis, by the way, is changedlives.org, I believe. I'll put it all on your notes page. But
my links page. Your links page.
But they're called Share Collaborative Housing, share with an exclamation point. And they started as a research on, and again, we're doing this interview this week, so I might not get it all right, but they started as researching self-help groups, like even coming out of like AA and those kind of groups. I think there was like an anthropological study that came out of a professor that was looking at, people in need. And they realized there's like 20,000 of these self-help groups, and they started looking at collective all these people in need. And then as the homeless challenge started becoming big, they started realizing there's a correlation. This is going to be crazy, Susan. Hey, human. There's a correlation between becoming homeless and feeling left out or whatever challenge you have in society, or feeling outcast, or you don't fit in and hitting depression, or losing your wife in a car accident, or what have you. So their program of shared housing is specifically set up so that after you've been living on the streets, you share a room with someone. And this sounds counterintuitive when I first heard it, like, why don't they get their own room? If you've been on the street for 20 years or so, and you get your own room, you lock the door. You're like, leave me alone, I got my space. You're just in your tent on the street, there's no difference. But when you share a room with someone, then all of a sudden, well, I don't want to sit in this room with this person all the time. You start using that house. You start using the kitchen, you go into the playroom, you go into the yard. They usually get big houses. And what happens is you end up getting socialized, and you build a network of people, and then you can start networking for jobs. And the whole thing is run by people who have already gone through the housing.
Lovely.
And the last thing about share I'll say that I learned that's just crazy is the housing shortage in Los Angeles is not as much with single family homes. I think that's not the right word, single family home. Forget single, but smaller family homes. I'm not sure what the name is. There's actually a lot of vacancies in these lower income full houses, because people are usually trying to buy those because they're inexpensive. So they want to rent them. They're usually for sale more than rent. So that's where there's this huge opening. So they go in there, they rent it to, they get 4 bedrooms, and then you have, or 3 bedrooms, whatever, and you have 8 or 6 people living there. And they build this community and they rebuild their lives. And then once you've done that for a year or two or something, and you've recovered, you're socialized, you take that to your job, your job skills, because after the transitional job is over, then there's a whole network in selfhelp.org, that whole company, where you can help find a permanent job, and then you get permanent housing. So it's not a flip of a switch, but the BeLeaflets are literally the steps to getting getting off the streets and
you're hoping that it goes nationwide, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, let's make it work in LA County first. I mean, right now, those things work. So if you go up and talk to someone and they want to get off the streets and they just follow those steps, and they get into a transitional job, especially, they're going to be able to afford shared housing, and they're going to be off the streets. I mean, legally I won't say this, but I'll just say it's very possible to get off the streets in, I would say, and be fully housed in half a year for those that are work capable and aren't too mentally torn or drug addicted and what have you, by just following the steps on the darn BeLeaflet. documenttree.com/BeLeaflets. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty exciting to be here.
And the DocumentTree is the name of the film, obviously.
Yeah, it begins with an A, ends with a tree. A documentary.
Yeah, I'll put links to all that stuff on.
Yeah, I decided to mention in case someone's Googling. I Google when I listen.
I always ask. And how can people find you as well?
So I am Michael Angelo Media, 3 words, and then MICHAEL, and then Angelo, and then media.com. And that's kind of my visual effects, visual effects work. But a lot of my stuff online is actually about flow. But
the fire stuff.
Yeah, we could get on, because Treeman's the reason I found that. I don't know if I ever told you that.
No, I didn't know that. It's called flow. It's fire dancing. What's?
Well.
Really quick too, your Instagram is...
Instagram is I shortened it, Mangelo Media, Angelo Media.
Yeah, okay. Because you post a lot of stuff on there.
Yeah. So, going to the... Well, I guess the BeLeaflets, did you have any more questions on the BeLeaflets?
It's pretty self-explanatory. It's wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I wanted to just close that before we go into flow, because what's interesting to me is there's a comfort that I have after all these years, because I knew that the film was going to do something big to help people. And then now this is in place. It's almost like I put this beautiful cake in the oven and now it's going to cook, and now we're going to see. I'm hoping people use them, and I know they will, and they actually already are. It's only been a week, and I'm already seeing people use them. But now I have this measurable change, and this is, since we're wrapping production, it's kind of a weird time. It's almost like now I got all my footage, now I have this social change going, and now we can really just focus on watching it all grow and finish up with the editorial, which is so fun.
And one person, you had this idea, and then you met with Lionel, one person.
Yeah.
Anytime anyone thinks that one person can't do anything, I direct you to the center stage and say, guess what? One is plenty.
Yeah, I mean,
it begets so much.
We had a lot of volunteers. We've had 50 volunteers.
Of course. No, it's a ripple, but I'm saying one idea.
Yeah, for sure.
What one idea can do, how it germinates and creates and becomes. And then, for all you know, one of those 50 people that volunteered will have their own aspirations of how to make the world a better place and bring humans together. And it's the ripple. Yeah,
no, I mean, sorry, sniffle. Even the first film that The Art of Funky Pussy, I had people that went into documentary filmmaking after seeing that. So I don't know what's going to happen once this one finally gets out there.
Wonderful.
On that note, before we get to flow, it's a weird thing coming over here. I was thinking about talking to you and why I have spent all this time on this film. And I guess in a weird way, I always knew I had to do it. You know, when I don't know, you have so many things that you do, painting and music and podcast and acting and comedy, and I mean, I'm sure there's a million other things I don't know about, but there's a weird thing inside when you know you have a destiny to do something, and a lot of things in your life maybe get derailed or go off the rails, or you make mistakes because there's this thing you need to do, and it took me a long time to get here to realize, oh, here it is. So it's been I think that's why the 7-year thing is happening, is because it's not something you can rush. It has to grow.
Yeah, like a tree.
Like a tree, exactly.
All right, really quickly, let's flow is the art of fire dancing. What is? Well, you've lost some eyebrows in the process, and they've grown back, of course.
Yeah, I've burnt some eyebrows for sure. I found this thing called flow state, based on, Treeman really making me look at our relationship to nature, because there's so much heavy technology addiction. Like, I'm dealing with my technology addiction. I stare at a computer to do visual effects, to make a living, to pay for a documentary, where I stare at a computer, listening to this man who's experiencing homelessness, dressing as a tree, telling us to be with nature. But then I'm not being with nature.
Speaking of flow, it's a flow chart.
So I end up really, I needed time to kind of wash away all this technology as I try to make this movie that's reminding us to connect to nature and live walk the walk. And so I started looking at what makes us happy and the neuroscience of happiness. There's a whole cover story on, I think, Time Magazine, The Science of Happiness, that came out this year. It was really good. Well-being, National Geographic did the same month, a thing on well-being and mental well-being, spiritual. And so then I discovered, through looking at neuroscience, this thing called flow state, and this kind of optimal state of performance. So a guy who does a bunch of books on it, Stephen Kotler. It's called The Rise of Superman is one of his books. That's really amazing. And it looks at when we're at our best. Creatively, athletes use it, Navy SEALs use it, musicians is in a flow state. And so I was like, wow, this is what Treeman's doing. And I started realizing when he's on stilts, he's in this state of flow where he's connecting with people, and people are picking up on, like, it's almost like you want to be with someone that's happy. You definitely want to be with someone on flow. You can feel this groove of life. And so then I started researching, realizing, oh, wait, there's a whole thing called flow arts where people play with fire. And I'm like, oh, I'm from San Francisco originally. Like, I know those people. I've seen all those fire spinners. So I started looking in it, and I'm into gymnastics. I'm into a lot of athletics, surfing, all that kind of business. And so I started learning to do flow, and I went to my first fire festival after only 4 days of starting to learn to spin fire. So flow arts is basically looking at how can you get into this mental state by, I guess you could call it spinning things, but you have a staff that you spin, like those Polynesian dancers, and they light it on fire. But there's all these different tools, like a rope dart, like they have in Kill Bill with the woman with the schoolgirl outfit, and she's got the metal ball at the end. Well, that can be on fire. And check out Flow Mayhem on Instagram. Sam is a badass. She's one that does the fire dart. It's amazing. So anyway, I went to the fire festival, and that's where I met Jeffrey, who invited me to the Jefferson, the fire jam on the east side where I met you. But I started to realize that when I was using these tools, you can get into flow state by walking your dog. You can get in a flow state by going for a light run. You don't want to go too heavy of a run. It's basically the space of being completely absorbed in an activity. And there should be a learning element to it, but it can't be too heavy where it becomes frustrating and irritating. It's almost, if you think about flow states, it can be almost when you're at your happiest. You're in the zone, like as an athlete. So this started last year, and basically it's my meditation. And I'm in the car right now. I have a dragon staff and I have a contact staff. I'm ready to spin fire anywhere, anytime. And it sounds counterintuitive that you would play spinning fire to find a meditative state, but when you practice enough without fire, the fire just becomes this visceral kind of, of the earth experience that just intensifies your flow state. Yeah. So
that's so cool.
Yeah.
Neat. And people can see you do that down at the beach a lot, I'm sure, down in Venice.
Well, it's illegal to beach. I don't think I've ever done that. I cannot answer that at this time.
Where do you do it? 'Cause I know that
you can legally do it. You can legally do it when it's permitted, which I've done at the beach. And there are some groups, if you go to Facebook, but you definitely have to go through all the safety stuff first.
Sure, of course.
There's a burn club in Los Angeles, but you definitely,
considering we live in a desert that likes to light on fire a lot, it's probably smart to do all the things legally.
Yeah, no, definitely do all the things legally. But there's plenty of practice groups where you can go and do flow without fire, and you actually practice about 95% of the time without fire, because lighting up is fuel and all these other things. So that's,
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. You live a very interesting life.
It's not boring, yeah.
Michael, thank you. Is there any last parting things you wanted to talk about?
No, I did scribble notes, but I feel like,
we covered a lot of
I knew we wouldn't look at any of it, and we would just flow, and I'll put the books and things if people are interested in.
Yeah, send me any of that stuff, and I'll put it on the
this is the one thing I wanted to say. The guy the flow is being researched, it started in the teens, like about 100 years ago. They were looking at optimal performance. So it's not like a hippie thing. It's just really funny that everyone thinks it's like a hippie thing. It's actually neuroscience. But in the 70s, when all the gurus started coming over to the Western world, the hippies adapted flow for yoga and all these things, which is part of that too. But really, now that the internet's making information available, people are realizing flow is for everyone. You know what I mean? And but I wanted to say the guy's name because I wrote it down so I could pronounce it. He's kind of like the father of flow, who did all the research, and he's got a number of books. He's born in 1934. He's Hungarian. His name is Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, and I definitely won't try to spell that name. But that's the only thing I wrote down.
Okay, well, great. And again, I'll put lots of stuff on the links page because I think we covered a lot of ground. Michael, yay! Thank you, and please give my love to Lionel.
Yeah, and I hope someday we'll be back and the film will be a success, and you'll get to maybe speak with him or something someday.
Yeah, that'd be
Treeman.
Really wonderful. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Sharing your story. Thanks for listening, everybody. Bye.
Bye. Tree you later.
Rate and review Hey Human on iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Thank you. Bye.